Let's take a look at what happens with a catch. A catch occurs when a portion of the edge engages with the wood that is neither supported by the bevel contact directly behind the edge nor by the tool rest supporting the shank of the tool. If I engage this by hand doing a planing cut using the short point of the edge, I have full bevel support both with the wood contacting the bevel behind that edge, but I also have support from the tool rest in line with that portion of the edge. If I engage higher on the edge towards the middle of the skew or up towards the long point will start to dig in. There's no bevel contact there, and it will buck the tool down into the tool rest. It will also rotate the tool in my hand. With a round shank, it's much more forgiving as it can roll on the tool rest and relieve itself. If I get a square shank skew into the view of the camera, you'll see that it's much different. Let me use this large square shank or rectangular shank skew to illustrate. If I use the short point, I have full bevel contact. If I move up to the middle, I have bevel contact and support, but I do not have tool rest support in line with that portion of the edge. If I introduce the long point of the skew into the wood, there's no bevel contact with the wood, and there is no tool rest support for that portion of the edge. It will engage, it will slam the tool down flat onto the tool rest, right there. And as it does, we'll engage and chip the wood out. Having cleaned up the cylinder using my round shank skew, I have a clean palette to show the difference between a catch with a round shank skew and a catch with a radius edge but rectangular shank skew. Let me put a little boundary line in the middle here so you can see the difference of the two. So we'll do a round shank skew on the right hand side and a rectangular shank skew on the left hand side. Round shank first. When I do this real time, I'm spinning this cylinder at just over 2,000 RPM, so it'll happen really fast. I'm going to use a light touch so that the effects aren't quite as dramatic, but we'll still be able to see the effects. I'm going to go into a planing cut, bevel contacting, cutting, and rotate the long point in. Let me do that again. Planing cut, rotate the long point in. Not very dramatic at all. That's a really light touch for you. You can see feathers out, long point gets in, rags up the fibers. Let me do a little bit more dramatic next to it. Planing cut, a little bit more force, long point in. Do it again. Planing cut. You notice the tool kicks just slightly and I have a light touch, so it relieves itself. You can see the fibers are ragged up by the long point coming down, and it rotates itself out of the cut. Let me do the same thing with a rectangular shank skew on the other side. This is a 1-inch rectangular shank with a radius edge. Again, a planing cut, anchor, bevel contact, planing cut. I'll introduce, you'll hear the difference. Let me stop and show what happened. I was in a nice planing cut, rotating up the edge, long point engages here, and look at the difference in the damage. Let me do a little bit more dramatic on this portion over here. Clean off the tool rest and the tool. Clean palette, a little bit more force. Wow, you could hear that, couldn't you? Much more damage as the rectangular shank is slammed into the tool rest. And there's the result. You may be thinking that there's quite a difference in the edge that can present to the wood at once. That's true, however, the damage is actually done because of the shank design. The shank being a flat facet on the back, fed down and cannot continue to relieve itself as it goes into the catch. It bottoms out and the force has to be relieved somewhere, either the tool kicking back which remember in this one I held it a little bit more firmly, so then the wood has to break out. In the less dramatic catch, I didn't hold the tool quite as firmly, so it relieved itself much faster and much easier. With the round shank, the initial catch was really not very dramatic. It just needs to be cleaned up. As I held it a little bit more firmly, there was a little bit more damage each time and a deeper groove that went all the way around. That's because the round shank does not have a flat facet to bottom out on. It rotates over and relieves itself.